Here with Dennis Nackord, okay? 10th degree black belt, probably my best friend in the martial arts field. And I consider him to be really my senior older brother and mentor in the martial arts because he has helped me so much in my path. But I want you out there to know more about Dennis because Dennis has a really fascinating history, and he actually just gave me a kind of a pre-copy of like a book that he's writing, which is kind of like a bio, but in it there are all these beautiful little sayings like "know one thing, know all things." Okay, so Dennis is a man of aphorisms. Hey, Dennis, welcome to SetPoint, which is the name of this.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Podcast. I'm great. I'm great. I'm glad. Super to have you here. So, Dennis, I was telling you, I really loved the short book that you wrote, the short story. Is that going to be the title, Warriors of the Silk Wind?
Title, because it has some meaning to me in any event.
Well, I know there's a Kempo technique called Silk Wind, but there's obviously more to it than I realized. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the Warriors of the Silk Wind, if you might.
Well, it's what you just reminded me of when you said that about the technique is that years ago when my kids were younger, I had a boat and I called it the Silk Wind.
Okay.
And to me, the Silk Wind represents the Asian culture, and more specifically in this usage, represents the martial arts as it came out of China and passed through other countries. And so Warriors of the Silk Wind, the Warriors of the Silk Wind are the early martial artists in the United States who took the martial arts and adapted it to the American culture.
Ah, gotcha. Interesting. So this story that you gave me told me a lot of things about you and about your life, and you know how you got involved in martial arts. And let's face it, man, that was like very early stages. I mean, I know, martial arts came into the States after the Second World War. There was elements going back as far as Teddy Roosevelt, doing jujitsu, around the First World War. So there's always a hand-to-hand type stuff that was going on. But really, I think the beginning was probably in the 50s and then 60s. And, when you got into it, I got into it around 65, which in Philadelphia, there were like two schools, there were two schools only. And then a third one came along, and that was the one I joined. But so you told me I was kind of blown away by this story, this fight in your youth, and this guy at Morris. It was a tournament, right? Pete Jensen was a guy who you started with and competed the same day you competed.
No, Pete Jensen was way before I was in martial arts. Pete Jensen.
What's the story on Pete?
Was a buddy in high school. I went to the significance of Pete Jensen in my mind. We went to one of the first McDonald's was in Belmont, California. That's where I was brought up. And Pete starts talking to this young lady, and her boyfriend wasn't very happy about it. And so Pete got in a fight with this other guy, and I got in a fight with his friend, the other guy's friend. Well, in any event, I had no idea what to do. It was ridiculous. And the other guy really didn't either. We ended up just kind of laughing it off and going and watch the other guys fight. But in my mind at that time, I thought, how inefficient are you? You have no idea what to do. There wasn't really a fear issue at all. It was just a matter of not knowing what to do. So at that time, right after that, Pete was working for the telephone company and put the telephones in at the first Kempo school up in the Bay Area there in San Antonio. Oh, the guy's a great guy, so you should go talk to him. I went and talked to him, and I've been doing martial arts since then. So Pete really got me into the martial arts by telling me about the school and about how I ended up feeling when I was his sidekick or wingman in his fight.
Gotcha.
So that was the
Gotcha.
start of the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I got that.
So,
I think I have that mixed up with another story about competition where you said a guy got hit, he got punched, and died that day.
right. Well, that was a different guy.
But
His name was Victor. I don't remember his last name now. And we were Victor, Jim Miller, and I were the three first guys in well, it's Ray Klingenberg's Tracy School. And so we went all through the ranks together. And we were at Greenbelt, and I was back on leave from the Navy. So I just went and watched these guys fight in a tournament. And this fellow Victor got into a match at Greenbelt level and got cat punched in the body. And after that, he came up and sat in the stands next to me and said, boy, when I got hit, I felt like real fire inside my stomach. And so we didn't think much of it. Well, he went home and he died that night. So he had his spleen ruptured. And what had happened is he was a really tough guy. He had the flu or something like that, but he decided to fight in the tournament anyway. And I guess he got hit in an inflamed spleen and it ruptured, and that was it. And I don't imagine he's more than 18, 20 at the time.
So when they say blood and guts era, that's exactly what it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
first time I hit somebody, I was amused.
Yeah. Yeah. So point karate, huh? Yeah.
Well,
some
what
other
was
things I picked up from reading your story was they talked a bit about the attrition model versus the developmental model. Could you elucidate on that a bit? Tell us a little bit more about your theory there.
Well, originally, martial arts in Asia was a way of learning.
We're getting some dropout
Like
in there. Hey,
today.
Hold on. We're getting some dropout.
Technical difficulty.
Yeah, you fade out. So yeah. So again, attrition model versus developmental model. Yeah.
Yeah. So and SEALs. If you can do it, fine. You get to stay in. If you can't do it, goodbye. They don't want you there. So martial arts originally, because of its origins, was designed as an attrition model. The guys that could stick with the training, have the discipline to stick with the training and advance themselves, were the ones of students that could hang in there and make it to the top, just like in Navy SEALs. So that's a perfect analogy. Well, what guys learned pretty soon in the 60s and 70s, if you ran your school on an attrition model, you're not going to have any students. You're going to have about 1 out of 10 people that can join your school or be able to do the material. So at that moment in time, when the schools became more commercial, the model was changed to what we call a developmental model. A developmental model, for better or for worse, I'm not saying it's worse in our society, but the developmental model says make a person the best that they can be. They're not compared to anybody else. And so, you know, you would say, well, that's diluting the martial arts. Well, it's just a different use of the martial arts. We're never going to go to war or hand-to-hand combat, but, you know, we want to improve ourselves in 3 ways. One, we want to improve ourselves physically and then mentally, and then have a good understanding of, you know, health, how to keep the body healthy. So those are really the 3 things martial arts should be doing for us in the United States.
Excellent. You talked a little bit about so well-being, I guess, being one of those factors, right? You also talked.
You said well-being.
Well-being, yes. Is that that's something you write about in the book about an upset of our well-being? I guess would you consider that stress?
Would that be considered what?
Stress.
Yeah, so there's in health and body health, you have a number of issues. When you talk about the physical self, there's 2, in my mind, there's 2 different things. One is called fitness and one is called performance. So you can be fit and healthy. Fitness is being healthy. It's without disease. Performance is being able to do a higher level of use of your body. So if you're a competition, if well, for whatever reason, if you want your body to be able to perform better, then you have to whole different type of training. So for the average person, the first thing we want to look at, walking's healthy, mild exercise is healthy, stretching, those types of things for health, eating properly. There's a number of things, obviously, and it's, go on the internet and do a search, you'll see them all. So that's what the health is. Now performance is what a number of some type of training where you're pushing your body harder. In other words, you're pushing yourself into an anaerobic state on a regular basis, and that does two things. It starts to increase your performance level, and as you do that more and more, it also increases your recovery rate. So if you think a boxer does 3 minutes round, he gets a minute rest, and he doesn't really even need a minute rest. He can probably do it in 30 seconds, but that's when the body recovers and you're able to go back and perform again. So that's a whole different thing than fitness. So both of those issues need to be addressed, and it just depends on the student. What are we trying to accomplish with that particular student?
So during the I guess the path that you've been on, you've come across some pretty cool teachers. Ed Parker being one of them, Joe Lewis, Marty Feldman, Dr. G, and I'm sure there are others. I mean, in your story, you come across a lot of people that maybe you may have just even trained with, But tell us a little bit about your experience with Ed Parker, the
Ed Parker, right?
Godfather of American Kempo.
Well, I just want to mention one other person that you left out of that list of instructors. His name's Tom Updegrove, and no, you're laughing, but you've taught me. We're peers, and you've taught me so much through the years that I certainly appreciate that. But anyway, Ed Parker, in 1960, in the Navy, and I'm from Northern California, but my ship was stationed in San Diego. But right after I got on the ship, it went to Long Beach, California, and it was in dry dock there for 6 months. So during that time, I looked up Ed Parker. He was 2 hours north of me by bus. And I trained with him every week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'd leave my work at 6 o'clock, get on a bus, get up to his school at 8 at night. And I trained with him for 6 months at that time. And actually, it was interesting because I was a green belt at that time, and everyone else in class was a brown and black belt. And so they very much also, I was from Tracy, so I didn't know the names that they used for the particular techniques. So this went on for about 3 months. And after about 3 months, Ed Parker came in one day and goes, "All right, we're going to spar tonight." Well, let's say, I don't know how to say this without sounding like a braggart, but after the sparring session, no one ever condescended to me before. After that.
Yeah.
Also, when I came back into the school the next time, Ed Parker took me into his office and he said, "Mr. Nackord, some of the people in my class aren't happy with you being in that class as a green belt, and I'm surprised." And so I said, "Yeah, whatever you want to do." And he called Al Tracy, and the conversation went like this: "Mr. Tracy, this is Mr. Parker. I have Mr. Nackord in my permission, would like to promote him to brown belt." And I'm sure Al Tracy just went, "Yeah, okay, fine." And so I was pretty cool because I got my 3rd degree brown belt from Ed Parker.
Yeah.
Now, if you fast forward, well, I think over 20 years, just about 20 years, I got back in training with him after being away from him for almost that long. And I started bringing him into my school here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And I was a 4th degree black belt then. And so after he visited the school a number of times through 1 or 2 years, he said to me, "Well, I'm going to have to get your belt rank where it belongs." And I said, "Oh, okay." And so the next time he came back, which was maybe 3 months later, he came back with a certificate. Now, I was a 4th degree black belt. When I looked at the certificate, it said 6th degree. So in 1986, I got a 6th degree from Ed Parker. And what was interesting about that is I said, well, gee, thank you. I didn't expect to go to 6th degree. He says, well, I've got to keep the ducks in order.
Yeah.
And
sure. Yeah, because you know, his Kempo was starting to flourish here on the East Coast more so than, you know, it ever did before.
yeah.
Well, that's a fabulous story. Now, I thought that, like when I got involved with Tracy's, that was 1970. I just get out of the military, and I met you, Ray Klingberg, and then Ray said, "Oh, we're bringing Joe Louis out here." And we had that initial seminar at Steve Johnson's school. You know, that 2-day.
Yes.
To me, it was like an enlightenment. But what I gather, you were working with Joe way before that. You had experience with him back in California before you even came here.
Yeah, so a great story. The first time I met Joe Louis was at the school in San Mateo, and I based in our memory, but I think he was correct when he said it was the summer of '68. I thought it was a little bit before that, but maybe not. And I was already a brown belt, so he shows up at the school, and you know, in his sometimes arrogant fashion, goes, "So where's the biggest hill you got around here?"
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in Northern California. We got a lot of big hills. Yeah. So we went to this.
I think that was a Bruce Lee thing too.
Well, yeah, but that came later. But just to finish this story about Joe Louis, so we went. There was a very long hill. It was about a quarter mile uphill. 4 of us, and all 4 of us ran the thing once. So I was done. I couldn't do it again, and one of the other guys couldn't do it again. Then the other guy with us was Paul Healy. So he and Lewis ran it the second time, and then Healy was done, and then Joe Louis ran it 2 more times. So that's how far past. That's how far past physically he was than everybody else in that area.
Yeah. So
and
but that hill run is some great stuff. Remember Steve Johnson? So when I got involved with Tracy's, when Steve and I went through central training together, and so we kind of became friends, and that was one of Steve's things. But then he had just came back from training with Bruce Lee and Dan Inosanto, and he was into that. And through the years, I've included hill running in my training. And when I train guys for fights, typically they got to do at least 100 yards on a hill twice for every round that they're going to fight. And I found that it's just actual conditioning, because it really keeps you, driving forward, That's why now I'm kind of I'm doing I ain't running mountains, but definitely the mountain climbing that I've been doing it's kind of still that same kind of training. So what else? So tell us some other stories about Joe. Okay, this is about you, not about me. It's about you and the people. So you probably have one of the best relationships and probably a number of stories than out of anybody in terms of Joe.
Well, certainly in that era, that's for sure. Yeah. But I'll tell you. There's so many stories about Joe, and one of them that sticks in my mind just to show his character. June Reese tournament about 3 times as grand champion, and I think they wanted a Taekwondo guy champion of that, so they never invited Joe back for the 4th time. Now it's either 3rd or 4th, but I think it was the 4th. And so Joe, I'm just going to go in there and compete. Then I'm going to win it anyway. So we go back. We're at the hotel where the tournament's about to go on, and Junri's walking the other way, and Joe walks up to him and just says, "So how come you didn't invite me to come back to defend my championship?" And so, he just kind of, "Oh, I read you retired." And Joe says, "So will you show me where it says that I was going to retire?" And obviously Junri couldn't do that. And as Joe was saying that to him, was poking him in the chest. And so, yeah. So then what happened was, his first match, he pulled one of the Taekwondo guys, and the rules there were no punching to the head. And so what would happen is Joe would go underneath and get a point with a punch to the body. The other guy would punch him in the head, and they would give the other guy the point. So that's a match that Lewis lost. All the years I fought with him, alongside of him, he was the best sport I've ever seen in fighting.
Really?
A lot of guys would have tempers. A lot of guys would go too hard. But he will always stay within the rules. He had very, very high integrity and a very high level of sportsmanship.
Yeah.
That's most of the guys in that here.
Just thinking back, in those early days, those early seminars, he had such excellent control. I mean, and guys would get all kind of worked out, like, because remember, he was sparred. If there were 20 black belts at the seminar, 30 black belts, he would spar them all. One after the other,
yeah.
And no time limit on it. There was no set. He would wait until somebody got burned out, and then he would take on the next guy. And always excellent control, but truly, phenomenal martial artist. We'll know that.
Right. Well, past his control was his high level of confidence, which allowed him to fight guys up to their level. So they never felt they were being blown away. They felt like, man, I almost was able to hang in with Joe Lewis.
Yeah.
But if they would ratchet it up, he'd ratchet it up. If they higher, he'd go higher.
Yeah.
So they never could go as high as he could go.
Yeah.
And so I think that confused some guys sometimes and made them think that they were very close to his skill level. But I don't know, you may never have seen him going all out.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense, because whenever you're working with somebody, especially you have somebody new to a fighting game, I think I learned that from him, how to spar somebody at their level. People tend to get overconfident, and want to ramp it up, and you say, you come hard, you're going to get hit hard, But I think the Joe Lewis relationship that you had, I mean, you were there. You were really the guy in the final days, and I don't know if you got all the thanks that you should have gotten for taking care of Joe. I mean, you really were influential in him getting to the hospice. Your student was actually one of the nurses there. It's phenomenal what you did. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome
for what you did.
I would like to comment on that if you.
I love you.
Like to hear sort of so years ago I was in church and I heard this priest from Africa give a sermon. He was raising funds for his parish in Africa. And part of his speech was that most of us really care about our human family and would love to help other people. But sometimes it's confusing because there's where to go. So there's every organization, I mean, they're all good, and then you're skeptical about, well, is the help that I'm giving really going to get to that person, or is it going to be used up by administration? So in any event, he said that he feels that help can be administrated is with a metaphor, you're walking down the road and you come upon a man who needs help. Well, that's the one you help. So Joe was here. He didn't have anybody to support him. So I'm walking down the road and there's Joe Lewis, and I our responsibility to help our fellow man. So that was my opportunity to do that with him. And, you know, so for the last 13 months, really, you know, and he was so funny too, because he would just yell at me all the time, you know, Nackord, you don't know what you're doing. And I hit the heavy bag, and he, you know, and to other people, he would say, if you want to learn how to punch, go see Nackord. But in private, I'd hit the bag and go, Nackord, you don't know what you're doing. So it was pretty damn funny.
Yeah.
But he was a tough guy. I mean, he really was. He had cancer really bad. He had the brain tumor, but it metastasized and went to a lot of different parts of his body.
I don't know anybody who really has survived that type of brain cancer. Terrible.
No, no one does. No one does survive it. And what happens? It's called a glioblastoma. And when Joe first had that, they did an operation and removed the tumor. And the doctor said to Joe, he said, if you do everything you possibly can, you'll be dead in 13 months. If you don't do anything, you'll be dead in 3 months. And so we did everything we could, and he lasted 13 months. That's the same disease that John, he's got a mental blank, the senator.
Yeah, McCain. Also,
yeah, that's the same thing John McCain had.
One of the Phillies ball players. My stepson's mother-in-law. I mean, there's been, you know, it's horrible. Yeah, no, same thing McCain had. Yeah. So yeah, and even after he was diagnosed and had surgery, he went to Thailand to finish that movie.
I couldn't believe it. He was on steroids.
Yeah.
Mentally, he was really out of it.
Yeah.
But he just wanted to, you know, he figured, well, you know, I can just lay here and die, or I can go do something. And he went over there and I think got involved and made a movie. At that time, he was just so blown up on steroids. It was really tough to see him.
Yep. Pretty crazy. So another guy I know you had a lot of experience with, who I've met, I've done a little training, is Marty Feldman. So tell us a little bit about your experiences with Marty, you know, and what kind of guy Marty was.
Well, what happened was in, I guess it was 1970 actually, and the big controversy back then was, what is superior, boxing or karate? And so rather than try to figure that question out, I decided I'd just go do some boxing. So fortunately, Marty was just down, he's like 2 miles down the road from me. There was a firehouse, and upstairs there was a gym, a boxing gym. I guess a PAL, police athletic boxing gym. And so I went down there and met him, and told him who I was and what I'd like to do. And we, you know, I started training with him then. And I've said this a number of times, but I've seen, I guess, some of the best punchers in the world, including guys on TV and including guys that, you know, I've worked out with and everything. No one punched as well as Marty. He could hit so hard, it was amazing. And he was about 5'10", maybe 5'11", real strong. And I mean, he hit one guy once in the jaw, broke the guy's lower leg because it was so much impact from the shot up top.
Oh my God!
The guy buckled his lower leg. Punched another guy in the arm once, broke his arm. So broke the humerus.
So but he's also trained some pretty distinguished fighters, yeah.
Yeah, I think he had Prince Charles was one of his champions. He had a number of, back early on, Augie Panatelis.
Okay.
He was a lightweight, I think.
Okay.
And so he trained 5 world champions. But besides his personal skills, he's a great trainer, and he could read what was happening. And I remember when I started with him, he was probably about in his 30s. But one time, what he did when I first went in there, and what he did with a lot of the guys, see a lot of guys in the ring with somebody, they get hit once and they leave. And so he'd had all that, he wasted all his time training them. So his whole MO at that point was, you come in, hey Marty, I want to train you. And he would say to you, well, let me just get in the ring with one of my guys. I just want to see how you do. So that's what happened with me. So he put me in the ring, like probably the first time I met him, with one of his heavyweights. The heavyweight that he put me in wasn't a very good fighter. He was a pro, but he wasn't that good a fighter. I promise you that. And so the first round, he was throwing a lot of shots at my head. I just didn't really know how to defend against that, at the boxing range. So I went back to the corner at the bell, and Marty goes, "All right, listen. All I want you to do is this. When he comes at you, I want you to sit straight down. That's all I want you to do." So next round starts, and the guy comes out again doing the same, really headhunting, and I did that. I mean, I followed the orders, sat down straight, punched the guy in the body. So that happened 2 or 3 or 4 times in that second round. The guy quit at the middle of the second round, so it was pretty good. Yeah, there's just so many stories about him. This one you'll love, and I don't know if you heard it or not before. He came to my school to train me one time, and so he said, "Nackord, put on the headgear." And being a young punk and everything, and I don't want to wear the headgear. So I said, "Marty, I don't want to wear the headgear." He said, "No, put the headgear on." Well, I said no to him about 3 times, and he got so pissed he couldn't tell. And so he puts the headgear on because one of you has to wear it because of headbutts. So the very first thing he did, when he faked the right hand coming this way, can you see me?
Yeah.
He fakes the right hand going this way. I rolled my head like that, which you should never do, and he hit me with the left hook and just broke my nose, and there was blood everywhere on the floor. And Vernon Young was there at the time watching that. So in any event, next time he told
me to put the headgear on. You put the headgear on.
I put the headgear on. That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's that's some classic boxing stories there. One of my students was training at Joe Fraser gym, and his coach says, "Look, you're dropping your left hand. You're dropping your left hand. You're dropping your right hand. Don't drop it. Bam. Broken nose." It's like that's how you learn in the gym. Of course, that is, I guess, that's the attrition model, huh?
Well, yeah, but what you said before how I have a lot of little sayings that I use.
Yeah.
One of them that would fit this is called "falling in a ditch makes you wiser."
Yeah.
So falling in the ditch is like getting hit. You get smart pretty fast on that.
You have a few of them. Let me see what I got here. Know one thing, know all things. Those who feel punctured must once have been a bubble. The axe falls first on the tallest tree. I like that one. The axe falls first on the tallest tree. Yeah.
There's a lesson in all those. That's why I didn't write any of those. I collected them through the years.
Well, the best one is those who say don't know, and those who know don't say. That sounds something like right out of the Tao Te Ching, And I know you're a big fan of Chinese philosophy. And that's one of the things that I'm always impressed that
yes,
you're a true martial artist. You're not just a great fighter, but you look at the psychological, the sociological, as well as the philosophical aspects of the art, and you really express that. And the testament of like how many black belts that you have produced, and the guys, and they stay in it. They're lifelong martial artists. Everybody's a gentleman, everybody practices, and they're really a testament to like what you've done. So it's pretty impressive, pretty dang impressive.
Well, thank you.
So now the next man on the list is Dr. G, who you've introduced me to. I love the man. And when we talk about true martial artists, he is the epitome of the Grand Master. I mean, not only the fact that he's got a bunch of wise little sayings, but I've never seen such a complete system as Bando. Not only does it have all the combat, I mean, real military death dealing technique, but it has such an internal system, the Min-Zin system, that nowhere, anywhere, have ever crossed anybody like him. So tell us a little bit about your experience with Dr. G.
Well, at this, I mean, quite frankly, in my mind, he's the only person I've met in martial arts who I would consider a grand master. I mean, the title's thrown around a lot. It's thrown around at me and that, but he's the only one. I'll tell you why. So martial arts is supposed to accomplish three things. One of those is the martial and the performance sport and that type of thing. So it's the fitness, and it's great. It gets your body in shape and that. So that's the first thing. The second thing, though, that martial arts should be doing for us is allowing us to improve our health, our physical. And so there's factors involved in that, big part stretching. And then, so you're right, Min-Zin has all the exercises that can help specific parts of the body. You've got to do them, and you got to do them regularly, but they really help your body be more healthy, and I think it increases longevity. And the third part that martial arts was designed to accomplish is teach a person, show a person how to calm their mind. And so he addresses all three of those parts. No other instructor I've ever met does that. Most of them are just teaching you the martial aspect of martial arts. And some will do the fitness. I mean, they're doing fitness and the sport. So that's all the physical aspect of it. But very few I've ever met teach you how to improve your health and teach you how to learn to calm your mind. So that's why he's different than everybody else. Right. And I'll tell you what, he can perform martial arts too. I mean, he's the real deal all the way across the board.
To see him, when I first met him, he would like walk with a cane. I guess, there's some issues, but he'd put the cane down and then start to go into his movements. And it, like, his energy body would fill the room. It would be like a creature coming out. I mean, this is what I saw, happen with him. It fulfills all the, the concept in my mind of what a true martial artist, is.
Exactly.
And you can see knowing a little bit about the Bando system at this point, I can see what all those exercises are about, So he definitely is an example. He's an example of what happens when somebody practices on a regular basis.
Well, his system is Bando, but parallel to that system, I'm not sure it's part of his system, but it's parallel to the system. He has a system called monk yoga. So monk yoga, it's called warrior monk. Wrong terminology. It's called the warrior monk system. Mm-hmm. Part of it is yoga or the Min-Zin, but that system is largely done with a staff. And so the warrior monks, the monks would always carry a staff wherever they went. And so the staff was used for a number of different purposes. One, of course, was warring, but another was wellness, how to keep your body healthy through the stretching. You don't need any fancy machines to work out. You have a staff, you can do them all. Could be working. These are all W's, right? Could be worship. All through history, heads of philosophies or religions have carried staff. And so worshiping, wellness, working, warring, and I'm sure I'm missing one or two of them in there. So that system, he's taught me that system for a lot of years, and I guess if you had to have one piece of exercise apparatus, that would be it. You can do so much with it.
I think the thing I
And that would
liked
be
about
called
the monk system was that, you know, self-defense, you did what you needed to, you know, without really hurting somebody. You disarmed them, dissolved them, but you didn't have to kill them. And
yeah, well,
I kind of like that kind of philosophy.
yeah, that's the monk system. So the warrior monk will try to inflict as little harm on his opponent as he can, even at the risk of taking some injuries himself. So he'll protect himself. He might take a shot where he could probably finish the guy off, but he won't do that. He'll try his best not to hurt the person. And the reason for that is that whenever you have some sort of trauma that you're in the middle of, whether it be your own trauma, but mostly if you have a trauma with another person, like you have an argument or something or a fight, well, you traumatize that other person. So if I hit you, you're traumatized, but I'm also traumatizing myself. So with that, is the whole philosophy is you don't want to create a trauma because you're going to traumatize yourself, and that's not the point of the martial arts. It's to keep your mind calm. So I think that's one of the big focuses of the Danda Yoga system.
So, so along with all those teachers and experiences in your life, you have come to develop really your own system. I mean, I know you call your school Nackord karate system, but you've come up with this motion science, which is pretty sophisticated. Tell us a little bit about motion science and how to learn more about it, and how it can impact our path on the martial arts.
Well, I mean, I 30 years ago, I started jotting notes down about what it is. It's a very simple system, and basically, the premise of it is that what does an airline pilot do before he takes off in the airplane? He has a checklist, and so he goes down the checklist. So I really look at motion science as a way of a martial arts checklist, and so you have to then categorize what this checklist has to involve. And so somewhere back in this conversation, you said, know one thing, know all things. So if you are built, and again, you have to define a system. A system a lot of times is just your way of interpreting what's there. You're not inventing it, you're interpreting it in your own way. And so, the categories then, the first category in any system is what we call an alphabet of movement. What are the pieces? So if you're a plumber, you got the wrench, you got the screwdriver, you got the this, you got the that. What are your tools? Or what is your alphabet? And so when you learn any system, if you learn a system of language, a system of music, there's notes, there's letters. You learn what the system, what the alphabet is. So that's kind of stage one. So now you got this alphabet. Meaning if you can't perform it. So the second stage of motion science has to do with performance. Or the second stage of being a plumber is, all right, well, you got to learn how to actually use the wrench or use the screwdriver. So in motion science, I have 6 categories that you want to look at for your performance: speed, power, accuracy, timing, attitude, and conditioning. So each of those can be addressed individually. So you can say, what is speed, or what is power? What is timing? What's accuracy? What's fitness? What is it? You have to define what fitness is. What do you mean by that? And then probably the biggest one in there is attitude. And that's one of the hardest things to train someone in, is attitude. The only way you can really train an attitude is through a high repetition over a long period of time, and know the difference between a real experience and an imagined experience. So if you can practice a certain level of performance, that then would come on at will under actual circumstances. You know, do it in every field. So then now at the end of these first two levels, the how do you get the tools really, really good? You think you got something. You say, wow, I can kick, I can punch, I can do all, I'm a great martial artist. Well, then they set somebody in front of you, and this guy's going to do something, and you got all your tools, but you're not sure which tool to use because you're lacking something. And what that lack would be how to apply these tools. So the first two steps can be accomplished in a year or two with a student. I mean, they're not going to be fantastic, but they should know a majority of the important moves and should be able to do them fairly well within that period of time. It takes a lifetime to really understand the strategies. So the basis of implementing a strategy is, there's a number of levels in there, but you know, how do you line up against the guy? What's important? What's the difference between distance and angle and whatever? And so then the next thing would be is, it would be nice to be able to read what that guy wants to do. So every martial artist, you know, I was in their school and they're practicing certain moves because that's the moves they like. Well, if I can determine what the moves are that they want to do, then I can determine what their weaknesses are. So there has to be a way in your combat of reading an opponent. Now you say, well, in sparring or competition, you got some time to do that. How about in a fight? Well, there's still time in a fight. It might be a millisecond, but if you do a little pump fake with your shoulder or a little hip with your hip and you see the guy move wrong, boom, you're right on top of that weakness that he has. And so motion science then lays out strategies for what you do to attack somebody or what you do to defend against somebody who's attacking you. And I broke it down to the simplest form without the detail of what you do. The tactic would be, if you attack somebody, you make them hesitate first. And you know, one thing to all things, the principles are pure. If you're a football team, you try to make, and you want to go down the field, you got to make the linemen have to be faked out, the ends, everybody, the wide receiver, the defenders have to be faked out, and that's how almost in any sport or any activity is by being deceptive with the opponent. So a big part of motion science is how to create the deceptions. Now, if you attack, you make the person hesitate somehow. If that person attacks you, then you have them miss you. So your whole point, if someone's attacking you, is how you set up so their strike hits you, yet you're still in position to counter. And that's pretty much, that's what martial arts is, that combat part of martial arts. It's those two statements. Now, sometimes they mix up, but mostly it's just simply those two things: make them miss, make them hesitate.
Yeah, you say something in the story I read about although you need offense, the real game is in the defense. You know, if a guy doesn't have great defense, he's never going to be a great fighter.
Well, that's true, and it's hard. It's not like night and day difference. It's just subtle differences. But most of the great fighters that I know of feel that ultimately punchers are going to be kickers if everything else is equal, because you got to stand on one leg to kick when you're kicking. So that that definitely is one aspect of that. But the statement, and you probably read this, I wrote it, is that people say the best offense is the best defense is a good offense, which means you just attack the guy. Yeah. Well, come on. How do you know what that person can do? You got to do something first. You got to make some kind of action, some kind of verbal statement. You got to do something that gives you a sense of what's going to happen. And so the best defense is a good defense. The best offense is a good offense. The problem is, and you can see with the samurai the samurai warriors, the sword fighters, they'll stand for a long period of time before they make a move because they know the first person who moves creates a vulnerability. So if my arms are close to my body and like that, I'm pretty good. But the minute I make any kind of action with my body, I'm opening myself up. So you've got to have a good defense to protect yourself, basically. And I've always been lucky that way. I only got hit hard about maybe 4 times. Well, you hit me one time. When you were a green belt and I was a black belt.
Yeah,
punch right in the face.
Out of,
I didn't move my head.
Out of self-preservation.
Yeah, well, I know. And again, it goes back to the same thing. Why did that happen? You got to be able to analyze that. And it's because when I went in at you, I went down with my head in a straight line. I didn't move the head. So you can the 3 ways you get hit are: 1, you go into the person and you keep your head on the same line. 2 is after you go in there and throw a couple punches, just stop and you get hit. Or when you leave it the same way you came in. Yeah. So you got to go in and come out on a different angle, but from a safety point of view. So that's why understanding the principles will help you analyze what you're doing wrong.
Yep. That's what I think makes your approach to it. Yeah. You say that in your stories. You actually list a bunch of fights. You analyze the fighters and the ones that you lost. You respectfully say how they nailed you. So I just think that's pretty cool that you can look back at it and go, yeah, I exposed my center line, I opened myself up, by doing this particular move, and they were smart enough to pick it off.
Exactly.
We're coming down to pretty much the end here, so I got one last question for you, and then maybe so what do you think about the state of martial arts today? Where are we and where are we going, in your estimation?
I think that that's a great question. Just if I'm just responding to that without overthinking it.
Yeah.
The people. Well, right now the big fad is jiu-jitsu. So a lot of the guys in their 20s are going into that, but simply that's just a different distance. And the jiu-jitsu is a martial art, but MMA is a martial sport. So they're 2 different things. And I think that if you want to be real good at martial arts, you got to study all distances. 1 would be open range, 2 is a grappling like Kempo, and 3 would be the body-to-body contact like jiu-jitsu or judo or something like that. But I think now there's way less interest in traditional martial arts, even though traditional martial arts is what gives you a good foundation to improve yourself. And it's like language. What happens in language is you learn to print. And when you learn to print, it's cumbersome. It takes a long time to print, but it gives you a good foundation. Some martial artists never leave the printing stage, so they're not moving forward. And people from the outside who look at martial arts think that that's what martial arts is guys printing movement. Start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. No pro athlete in any sport moves like that. What would make you think that that's how a fighter should move? And so what happened in the United States is it's eclectic now, and the guys are, I think, much more fluid in their fighting, but there's a lot less of them now. A lot of people just don't have the discipline. I see it at my school. Don't have the discipline to train like we used to train. It may be an age thing. I'm not sure what the heck it is. It may be societal. Our society is so fast-paced now, and electronics and everything. A lot of the students, the younger students I have, would rather be on their computer than work out. It's crazy. So and that's just my perspective. Like I stay pretty much to myself these days. What is it?
See, you need balance. You need balance, whatever the activity.
Yeah, you need balance.
It's about balance, isn't it? Do you remember Ed Parker's story about Baby Mouse and Mama Mouse? Do you remember that story?
About what?
It was a story about Baby Mouse and Mama Mouse.
No.
Somebody asked him, well, what do you think about these guys doing this pressure point? It was like around the time of, people talking about death touch and stuff. He goes, well, let me tell you a story. Baby Mouse and Mama Mouse are out in the alley one day when a big cat comes along. Mama Mouse says, Baby Mouse, quick, get behind me, and barks like a dog. Roof, roof, roof. And the cat takes off. Mama Mouse says, Baby Mouse, let that be a lesson to you in the value of knowing a second language.
I love it, man. That's awesome. That's great.
Really, it hits the point. It actually hits the point right off the bat,
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything you want to close up with, Dennis? Because
no, we're good. I mean,
great. I mean,
appreciate you having me.
We're just only tapping stuff. I mean, you've got this way of 3 and so on. When you gonna publish the book?
I don't know. I'm trying to find somebody to go through and kind of edit it. Plus, it needs a little bit of an editor writing it a while back. So I got to put a little bit more in there about Dr. G and about where I am today and everything.
Yeah, well, what I liked about it, man, I didn't realize you had pictures, and I mean, you really break down motion science and way of 3. And by the way, just to hit it, way of 3 is taking the concepts of Minzen and how to develop emotional, mental, psychic self-defense, which is really, really important stuff. Okay.
And a lot of that came from Dr. G. Yeah.
Yep. Hey, so we don't go into 2 hours. I think it's probably a good stop for now. We can always do this again. Hey, it's been a pleasure sitting here talking to you. And
well, it was my pleasure, Tom, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right.